So it's really my honor to be here with all of you, to be in conversation. And I'd love if we could start by just going around with introductions. Lilli, do you want to go first?
Honored. Can everyone hear me okay? Cool. Well, I know I've met Brad before. Imani, great to meet you. Joanna, I've done a lot of work with Athlete Ally, so also a pleasure to be in touch with you. As you mentioned before, I'm Lilli Barrett-O'Keefe, and I am the Regional Director for streetfootballworld, which is a network of organizations that use soccer as a tool for social change. So we're now in 87 countries worldwide, and we work with 127 locally registered nonprofits that are using soccer as a tool for social development in whatever capacity they're working in small communities across the globe. And the reason I'm here today is I founded an initiative called Play Proud, which is working with local grassroots organizations to make their programs more LGBTQ inclusive. So really a coach-centered mentorship program to give coaches the tools to be able to support young players on and off the field. So we've done a lot of work with City and the Community Foundation. Brad's been part of some of our work on the ground up in Harlem. And yeah, it's just a pleasure to be here and excited to have conversations with two incredible athletes and mentors and champions on and off the field. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Imani?
Hi, everyone. My name is Imani Dorsey. I am a player from Sky Blue FC in New Jersey, and this is my third year in the NWSL. I'm originally from Elkridge, Maryland, and I graduated from Duke University in 2018. I majored in environmental science and policy, but I also did a lot of work in the athletic community concerning social justice and student athlete leadership. So I became an Athlete Ally ambassador last year and was able to work with Joanna a little bit and start kind of doing some advocacy in a realm that I'm really passionate about and I want to stay involved in and increasingly get more involved in. So thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you guys.
Thank you. And Brad.
Nice to see you, Lilli. Joanna, nice to see you. Nice to meet you, Imani. I am Brad Stuver. I'm one of the goalkeepers for New York City FC. I became an Athlete Ally ambassador last year. I got involved through playing for Pride with Austin Blues. This is my second year doing it. Like Lilli said, I've been involved with City and the community here at NYCFC and have done some other work around the city. And I think this discussion is going to be really important. And I'm really looking forward to discussing everything with you guys.
Great, thank you all so much. I'm really excited about this conversation. I wanted to start by just asking how everybody is, how your quarantine's been, how you've been able to stay engaged as athletes, as allies, as activists. So whoever wants to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, I can start off. Quarantine has been interesting for sure. We started quarantine, we had a week of preseason as quarantine began. So we had just kind of gone into our season. It was ready to get going, but things shut down quickly and took a turn. But we stayed very motivated, like very encouraged, thankfully. And thankfully we're having some sort of a season. We leave to go to Utah Saturday for our team, which is playing in the NWSL Challenge Cup in Utah. So that's very exciting. And yeah, it's been an interesting time, but I think I've just tried to use it as an opportunity to kind of learn more and be involved in any way I can and communicate with people who I don't usually reach out to or just learn from, read a bunch of different books. Like it's given me a lot of time to pursue passions outside of just focusing on soccer all the time. So I've been appreciative of that, but it also has its challenges and I'm thankful to get out to Utah and hopefully start playing soon.
Well, we're really looking forward to cheering for you all in Utah, so we'll be tuning in.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'll piggyback off of Imani. Very similar. We had gone through preseason and we were actually playing in some of the Champions League games. And the day after one of our Champions League games, we got the call that we had to go into quarantine. Didn't really know how long that was going to last or what it was going to look like. So, I mean, at first it was great because we had just gotten out of preseason and we were all tired and really wanted to break. But then after a couple weeks, we realized that we weren't playing. We wanted to be back on the field. But like Imani said, it's been a very interesting time, but it's been very good to be able to kind of disconnect from soccer for a little bit and kind of focus on things off the field. I think as players, we get so consumed about what goes on the field and our own performances and what we can do to make ourselves a better player that we kind of put everything else in our lives on the back burner. It's just part of who we are, and our focus is always about soccer. So I think this time has really given me the ability to step back, see what's going on in the world, and kind of open my eyes and learn some new information that I wouldn't have had the ability to if I was still focusing on soccer. So
I'll pretend that I was in as good a shape as these two before before Corona hit. And I wish I could be one of those that says that they've been working out a lot more, but none of those are true. But in the same boat, we were also gearing up for a huge international exchange. So we piloted the LGBTQ program Play Proud in the North America region, and we've launched to 7 countries in India, South Africa, and Europe. And we were looking to have our first residency with 30 coaches in April. So we had to pause that and sort of revisit our implementation strategy. So similar to Imani and Brad, we sort of were in our preseason and gearing up to do this big launch, and had to pause it. And it's definitely been a challenging time, but also been incredibly unifying. Weirdly enough, a lot of the work we do is across borders, and it's been fascinating to see. This is really one of the first moments that everyone's really in the same boat or in the same house. So it's been sort of eye-opening to think about how we can gather in different ways across platforms. So yeah, it's been challenging, but also a moment to sort of reinvent the way that we operate, which is much needed.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for us, it's been just really inspiring to see that even though we're separated physically, we've seen just such a strong showing of support globally, with athletes speaking out around Black Lives Matter, speaking out in support of trans athletes. It's just been really incredible to see that people continue to be really engaged and committed to these causes that they believe in. So speaking of that, I mean, I know the 3 of you have been outspoken about the causes that you believe in, and how you see sport as a mechanism for social change. So I would love for each of you to touch on that, on, you know, why you think sport has that ability to reach people across divides and push for the changes we want to see in society.
for me, sports has always played a major role in my life. I remember growing up that I was always one to try and like go outside and play different sports. I wanted to play baseball, I wanted to play basketball, tennis, frisbee, whatever it is. I was always trying to do something new. And the good thing about sports was it didn't matter who you played with as long as you had a big enough group to do it with. And that unifying factor was, it wasn't like you were out to find the right person to do something with. It was really just anybody that wanted to play could play. And that mindset is carried with me throughout all of my years. And like, I just think the way sports can bring people together in a time of jubilation or in a time of strife is unseen in so many different aspects of our life. And for me, the power of sport is something that we can harness and really use as a guiding light to affect real change. So it's been a big thing for me to use my platform to encourage change in the ways that I think our world needs.
Yeah, I think to add on to what Brad said, in sport, there's always a common goal, no matter who you're playing with and whether you agree with them or were raised in a different way. Everybody's working towards a common goal, and I've always loved that about soccer. It's you come together as a team and you find each other's strengths, and you gloss over each other's weaknesses and you lift each other up. And I feel like there's so many parallels in sport with the lives we live, and it brings people together because there's this common struggle to push past whatever hardships we're dealing with in life, and that's always very apparent in sport. And so it makes the celebrations better, and it makes the triumphs sweeter because we understand how hard it took, how much work it took to get to those points, and that it requires not just one person. It requires a group to get to that point. And I think in terms of social change, that's exactly what is needed to enact change. And I think athletes are a great group to call for those changes because we understand what it takes, and we understand that you need everyone to go together to make change happen. So I think that's always been something that my parents have, a value that my parents have instilled in me, and I think it's why I love soccer so much and I love sports so much. And I would be remiss if I didn't speak up on issues that I'm passionate about, because I feel like that's my responsibility now as a professional and having the platform that I have.
Definitely agree with these two, and I won't just further repeat, but I think also now we have to emphasize the importance of just playing. And I don't think enough now with kids and, the varying responsibilities that a lot of kids growing up, across the country and the world have to do, the importance of like getting out and playing. And so, we can use soccer as a tool, as a medium, as a mechanism, as a catalyst for change, but also, putting the severity of the sport aside, just the importance of getting kids out and getting kids playing. And as you said, Brad and Imani, like collectively coming together and having sort of just like a no strings attached active play is so important. So I think especially at our work at City in the Community and across the other work that we do, to sort of strip away the structure of it and really get kids back to playing and feeling free, because for a lot of unfortunately, a lot of kids that are experiencing hardships, they don't have the opportunity to really just be a kid and play. And for all of us, I think there's nothing better than being on the field or, playing sports, whatever sport that is, and just playing. And so I think there's a lot of freedom there.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that, for so many of us, sports has been life-changing. I mean, it's just like such a powerful outlet for everything, for stress and anxiety, and a way to be able to make lasting friendships. And I think it's so important that we, are fighting for everyone to have that access. So thank you for that point. And kind of speaking to that, Imani, I would love to talk about the piece that you wrote for the Athlete Ally website when you joined us as an ambassador. I mean, personally, I think that piece should get a Pulitzer Prize or whatever the prize could be for an essay like that, because it's so powerful. And I think it just captures so well the way that gender norms hurt everybody. But especially as I think you outline in such a beautiful way in that piece, the way that, your own experiences in sport really kind of shaped your journey as an ally for the trans community. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, about, kind of your writing of that piece and what that journey's been like for you.
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, firstly, thank you for the compliment. That is high praise, so I appreciate that. But I just remember speaking with you and initially kind of you extending the opportunity for me to write something as my introduction as an ambassador, and kind of going over what potentially I would like to talk about. And when you kind of suggested Black trans and people, and that really spoke to me, because just as a Black woman, I knew that was something that I wanted to speak up on. So kind of you giving me the encouragement and kind of go ahead and be like, yeah, this would be something that would be great, and giving me the resources to kind of learn a little bit more and understand what's happening. Especially this was around the time when I think Athlete Ally was speaking up a lot and working with Terry Miller and Andrea Yearwood. So it was really cool for me to kind of dive into that story and understand a little bit more of what they were experiencing, and kind of trying to write a piece that I thought was authentic to myself, and I felt like was something that people could understand in a way, because I'm not trans and I will never understand that experience. I understand what it means to be a girl in a largely male-dominated areas such as sport, and I understand what it means to be a Black woman in that area as well. So I just know that from my experiences, women and playing with women has been such a gift to me. My best friends are my teammates to this day, and I think I've learned so much and become so much more aware of who I am as an individual because of the experiences I've shared with my teammates. And it really hit home with me that potentially, like, especially female trans athletes could be denied that opportunity. It felt so unfair to me and so heartbreaking, because if I was in that position, I would feel the same way. And so I think that's what I wanted to get across with my message, and trying to explain that gender norms are everywhere and they're pushed upon us like at such a young age, but we can push past that if we identify them and acknowledge them and try to do something about them from a young age, or I guess like continuously. And so that was really like the message that I wanted to hit home, and I hopefully was able to convey that across. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll share the link to Imani's article as well, so that everyone watching this can take a look, because I think it's just a really important piece to read. And I think it's a topic that continues to be really important and top of mind. And Imani, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit also about, we're just seeing so much more conversations happening where athletes are realizing their platforms and are really seeing that they have this potential to change hearts and minds, to reach their fans, to reach their teammates. What is kind of your hope from that? Like, do you think there's like kind of a new vision for athlete activism that we didn't see before?
Yeah, I feel like some of my biggest like community, LeBron, Serena Williams, to just name a couple, I've always seen them being engaged in their community, and I've always really valued that and admired that. But I've also seen the pushback of that. Like, you see news correspondents being like, "Oh, stick to your sport. Like, this isn't your realm. Like, you can't speak on it." And I just thought that was so degrading and undermining, because like as athletes, we're humans and we have things that we're passionate about off the field, and any other day of the week, everybody wants to know what is our favorite movie, like how did we grow up? They want to know everything about us. And then if we have an issue that we're passionate about and it becomes quote unquote controversial or whatever, all of a sudden it's not appropriate or something. So I think that has been a fear that some athletes have had in the past, because people like to distance sport from activism or politics, because sports is supposed to be like, oh, it's this neutral ground where I don't have to worry about the rest of the world that's happening. But I mean, within sport, there is still discrimination and segregation and inequality. And so to act like sport is this perfect utopia is just completely false. And so to not let athletes speak on what they're passionate about, even if it's not in the sports realm, it's incredibly hypocritical to me. So I am like really happy with kind of this realization generally that you have a voice, everyone has a voice, and your voice matters, and what you say and what you choose to amplify is important. And people will listen to you and people will hear you. I think people are starting to listen to each other. And I think this is a great opportunity for athletes and teams alike to partner together and take stands for things. And I know with Sky Blue, just in the past couple of weeks, their ability to say Black Lives Matter and to really give me and my Black teammates kind of the encouragement and empowerment that we feel like we can protest and we can say what we feel, and they are gonna like share our messages on social media and like communicate with us and coordinate with us about what we feel like, what nonprofits we want to donate to, or just like ways to get involved in the community. It's a growing conversation, and it's something that I think has been like not disregarded, but like overlooked or overshadowed a little bit. And I think now it's coming to the forefront that that sports can change people's minds, and so we can be on the forefront of this opportunity. And I'm really proud of the athletes who are speaking out and continue to speak out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, I think having that support from, on the team level as well makes a huge difference. And just that recognition that athletes, like you said, are human beings, and that the issues that we face throughout our lives don't disappear when we're on the playing field or when we're watching the game. So it's like very important that we have that kind of holistic approach to speaking out about what matters to us. So thank you for that. And, and just to say that both Imani and Brad signed on in support of calling on the NCAA to move tournaments out of Idaho in response to Idaho's anti-trans athlete bill, which we've already just seen a tremendous response to. And, and I just think from that, and I think, we're seeing just this growing movement of athletes, speaking up about racial justice and gender equity and, these issues that are so important. And I think we can see that there is already just such a tremendous impact. So really grateful for all of the athletes who are speaking up. And Brad, I want to turn to you. And, I know, like you mentioned, you first got involved with us through playing for Pride, and you became an ambassador. And would love to hear from you a little bit about kind of what your journey has been as an ally, both an ally to the LGBTQ community and an ally to the Black community as well, and what inspired you to speak up.
Yeah, so I think throughout my career, I've always tried to be active in the spaces that I thought needed a voice, but I was never the one to kind of put my name out there. I think, like Imani was talking about, I think there's this idea that as an athlete, you're not allowed to speak on anything other than sports because you're afraid of the repercussions. You look at Colin Kaepernick, and he takes a knee, and I mean, what he's doing is fundamentally right. And all of a sudden, now we're in a time where everyone is looking at that and they're like, oh, yeah, Colin Kaepernick was right. But I mean, it's years down the line, and he was ostracized. He was kicked out of the NFL, basically. And so I think so many athletes were afraid to speak up and put their name on things in fear that it would ruin their careers. I think I got to a point last year where I finally got the courage to kind of speak up on everything that mattered to me, and I stopped caring about the repercussions of what might happen, because it was at a point where I truly believe that there's more to life than soccer. And if people don't agree with what I'm saying, then that's their problem. And what I need to say needs to be said. And so last year, especially last year, I got involved with Athlete Ally. One of the major contributing factors was one of my ex-teammates, Matt Pacifici. He retired from soccer. We were teammates in Columbus, and he came out as gay last year, and he's an Athlete Ally ambassador. And for me, it was very difficult because I was teammates with him, and he was living with a secret that he didn't tell very many people. And he was my teammate. We shared a locker room. We shared the field. He was a goalkeeper, so we spent many hours together every day. And that wasn't something that he felt comfortable enough to tell me. And it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that people are living their lives in secret, and it's damaging their lives, and it's damaging their ability to function in a day-to-day life. And so I never wanted that to happen again. I wanted to make my voice heard. I want everyone to know where I stood on certain issues, so that anyone that was feeling oppressed or anyone that was feeling like they couldn't talk to someone would be able to talk to me. And I never wanted to be in a situation where only my close friends and family knew where I stood. I wanted everyone to know exactly how I felt and that I would be an ally in any time. So that was kind of why I wanted to put my name out there and become an ally and get more actively involved.
What advice would you give to an athlete who, who is realizing that they have this platform where they can speak out, but they're not sure of kind of how to get started or what to say?
That's a big thing. I mean, it's an individual decision, and I know it took me some time. I mean, last year was the first year that I kind of came out and started speaking up, and that was my 7th year as a professional. So I mean, it took me 7 years as a professional to start speaking up and speaking my mind. So the biggest advice that I can give to people is, especially in this moment now, that the world will continue on without soccer. Soccer is only a job. I know it's a lot of, like, it's a passion, it's everything to me, but at the end of the day, you can only play soccer for so long. What you do for other people lasts a lifetime. What you can do to help your community lasts a lifetime. And so just taking a step back and realizing that there are so many important issues that you need to look at other than soccer, and that no matter what happens, you'll always be able to fall back on knowing that you're doing the right thing, even if soccer doesn't work out. That would be my biggest advice.
Thank you. I think that's so important. Lilli, I'd love to turn to you now. And I know that in some of the great work that you're doing, you're working to foster greater inclusion in sports for LGBTQI plus youth. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you see as some of those significant barriers to inclusion for young people and what creative solutions you've seen to overcoming them.
Yeah, first, just major shout out to Imani and Brad. It's so important, the work that you're doing. And I know I'm sort of seeing it from another angle because I'm working with young people. And, your mentorship and your ability to speak out goes way beyond even what you could imagine. So massive kudos. Imani, something that you mentioned that goes back to your question, Joanna, was sort of the idea of needing to distance sport from activism. And I see that a lot with the young people that we work with. And I see that being a huge barrier. A lot of LGBTQ athletes feel that they either need to be an athlete or be a queer person, and they can't be both. And sadly, there isn't really spaces where young people feel like they can go into a locker room and be an athlete and be a gay man or a lesbian female or a trans athlete. And so I think we're fostering these spaces that really either make you feel like you need to be an activist and be able to be out as you are, or be an athlete. And a big bridge that I hope that we're trying to solve here is really make young people feel that they can be accepted however they are and whoever they are, and they can be an athlete and they can be a sister and a mom and a student and whatever it is. And I think too often sporting spaces are very heteronormative and are incredibly hard and rigid in the way that we see things, and we design these spaces, both physical and the culture of these spaces. And so I think a huge barrier, of course, there's the overt barriers of access and pay to play and all of those, the intersection of race and gender and socioeconomic classes. And then you add in the component of also feeling like once you get yourself into this space, you may not even be accepted there, then that's just a whole other barrier. So I think it's really important that we try to design these spaces, both physically and the culture, that we accept kids holistically and that we can accept them as we are. And I think that what you said about that distance between sports and activism, we need to be able to blend those things. We need to be able to make sure kids feel like they can be the best, forward and goal scorer on the field and be a very proud gay man. And we are so far from that. And it's, just as you said, Brad, about your former teammate, Matt, like I'm sure all of us are so sick of hearing about players coming out after they retire. I mean, it's terrible. And so many young people are sadly, leaving the game early. And I think a lot of that is because our spaces aren't accepting them for who they are. And going back to that, you were kind of, Imani, you were speaking about, the clubs listening and needing to have folks listen to us. And something I think is refreshing about young people, and also can be quite daunting, is, young people are always listening. And I think that is a huge opportunity for us, but also a huge downfall in terms of mentorship. And so, I think HRC released a study that 73% of LGBTQ young people do not feel safe in their sporting communities. And that's just unacceptable. And so it's not only these overt acts of discrimination or homophobia, it's these covert ways that our coaches are talking to young people. And young people are 100% listening. And so how can we, as athletes, as administrators, as coaches, make sure that our spaces are open and we honor kids as they come and as they are. And, a lot of that is outright spoken and a lot of that is unspoken. And so I think it comes down to all layers, the person that checks you in at the front desk, to your coach, to the front office, to your athletes on the screen. We all have a part to do to make kids feel that they can just be who they are on and off the field. And sadly, I think we have a long way to go, but it's like you two kind of leading the way that's going to make that change.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point about, some of the ways that homophobia and transphobia are perpetuated that we don't even think about. There's a study that says that a lot of times when athletes use homophobic language, they don't think of themselves as actively being homophobic, but that still causes athletes who are LGBTQ to stay in the closet and drop out of sports and feel like it's not a safe space for them. So thank you for that point. And, I think all too often, young people are dismissed when really I think we see time and time again how much they're really at the forefront of pushing for change. So what do you think that people don't see about youth athletes and their power as activists that you wish people could see?
That's a good question. It's funny because I always go back, and when I do these coach trainings, I say, it matters, but your sexual orientation, your gender identity matters, but it also doesn't matter. And this idea that we need to honor and we need to see people and see that they, a lot of young people are coming with a lot of disadvantages and traumas, and that adds to who they are as an athlete. And we need to cater and individualize our coaching tactics to them, but also it doesn't matter. And you see that with young people as they come on and they're like, I even catch myself with a lot of our young people, they'll bring their boyfriend and then 2 months later they have a girlfriend. I'm like, wait, I thought you were straight. And they're like, yo, coach, it does, whatever. And there's this element of like fluidity that we, and I think young people are, especially, of course, being from, living in New York City, I think we have a special breed, but there's this element of like, allowing this like nature of fluidity and just like allowing people to be as they are. And I think us older folk oftentimes get in the way of trying to like identify people and name them and make sense of it for ourselves. And I think a lot of the younger generation do kind of operate and work through things a bit more fluidly. So I think that it's key for us to listen to them and create spaces where we talk about pronouns and we have these conversations, and not just to identify spaces as, oh, all of our players are straight. We don't really need to have these conversations. It's like, no, even if you think that your spaces aren't in, all cis identified straight boys, you still need to treat it as, as a completely open space and have these conversations. So I think we need to spend a lot more time asking young people questions and listening to them, because I think they have a lot more answers than we have, or that people give them credit for.
So I know we're about at that time to wrap up, but before we do, I want to just give everyone time to just say some last words and takeaways that you would like people to leave this panel with. I know for myself, I think something I've just been thinking about so often is the quote that none of us are free until all of us are free. I think that this is 1,000% the time when we need to be thinking about really extending our empathy beyond our own experiences. We need to be allies. We need to be speaking up for one another. And I think that kind of intersectional allyship is so important. It's so needed. Would love to hear from all of you. What's the one thing you hope that with after hearing this conversation?
I think the one thing that strikes me the most, I was on another panel right before this, and one of our New York City supporters said something that really struck home with me. And what he said was, there's no such thing as perfect allyship. I think too many people get wrapped up around the idea that they need to know everything before they go in to support a cause. And for me, it's just everything's a learning experience. The ability to stand up, the ability to stand in a fight that you don't truly understand is okay. As long as you show up and you're willing to learn about the issues at hand and you're willing to listen to other people that have been in the fight longer than you're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to not fully understand things at first, but the first step is just to show up. And then the next step is to do the work and to learn about everything and to talk to people and just continue that allyship. And I think that just there is no such thing as perfect allyship really hit home with me.
Yeah, I mean, I would just encourage, from what Lilli was talking about, the unspoken actions and or even just unknowingly kind of perpetuating stereotypes or an environment where people don't feel comfortable to be themselves in the sports arena, I think is so important, because I think back to my college career, and some of our teammates came out to us, and I remember that year, in that moment, everybody was being so incredibly vulnerable, but it broke my heart, like Brad was saying, that they were so nervous to do that. And from that point, I think our team worked very hard to make sure that it was an inclusive environment where they felt safe and they could feel trusted with that, and that we had that information. But for the people that are like watching this panel and listening, it's like, reach out to your teammates and reach out to the people around you and let them know that you care about them and you want to understand who they are and what they struggle with, no matter who they are. Because I think if people just start reaching out and trying to understand and truly empathize with each other, then we'll create an environment where people feel safe to express themselves in the way that they feel is their true self.
They're saying all the good stuff. I can't believe I keep going last, but I mean, echoing both of that, but I would just say no action is too small. So just like get out there, challenge yourself, challenge your understanding, challenge your language, challenge your relationships, challenge the way you interact with people. And again, no action is too small. Similar to what you said, Brad, there's no perfect way to be an ally. So just try to learn and grow and challenge the people around you and your network to do the same. And I think if we all sort of join in and make small steps together, we can go a long way.
Thank you so much to all of you. This conversation has been incredible, and I can't think of a better way to wrap up Pride Month. So thank you so much to each of you for lending your voice and your expertise to this panel. As I said at the start, I'm just so grateful to be in community with all of you. So thank you, and happy Pride Month, everyone.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us, Joanna, and happy Pride Month, guys.